What is up everyone, my name is EvilLol and welcome to How I Built My Test Chamber. A series in which I give my thought process behind building some of my very own test chambers in hopes that fellow test creators can learn a thing or two. This time featuring the map Flow. And bam, here we are. The default box which every test creator starts out with. Ignore the webcam in the corner, silly old me forgot to record a separate video for that, so we'll just have to use footage I got from my stream over on Twitch, link in the description if anyone would like to watch. Arguably, for most people, starting out is the most difficult part of creating any test. I mean, it can be pretty difficult to turn this bland box into something like this. There are a few ways to go about starting any test chamber, and the method will vary from person to person as everyone has their own preferences, but I'll go ahead and do my best to describe my own thought process behind starting out. I should mention at this point that there will be spoilers for the map in this video. If anyone would like to play the map first, the link to it will be in the description. And with the spoiler warning out of the way, let's get straight into it. There are basically 3 steps that I like to follow when starting my test chamber. The first one is to figure out which elements I'd like to work with. Step 2 is to come up with a central concept that my chamber will revolve around. And step 3 is to set an exit condition. Let's explore these steps one by one so we can better understand how they'll help us create our test chamber. This brings us to step 1, figuring out what elements we want to use in our test chamber. By deciding beforehand what elements we want to be present in our test, we can start planning ahead for our central concept. You can decide any element that you want or any combination of elements. I would personally recommend choosing no more than 3 major elements to work with. And yes, I am using the same terminology that Demon Arisen does in his conveniently named How to Make Great Test Chamber series. For anyone unaware, the major elements include lasers, light bridges, funnels, the 3 gels, and faith plates. All other test elements are considered minor test elements. Each of the major elements has incredible logical potential and ability to make great tests revolve around them. As such, you might think the more the merrier, but it's actually the opposite. If you add too many of these elements into your test chamber, you won't be able to use them to their full potential, and thus you'll make your test chamber feel lackluster to those who play it. With this in mind, let's move on to step 2, coming up with a central concept for your test chamber. This concept is going to be what makes your test chamber stand out amongst the others in the workshop, and it can be literally anything. A few examples would be using a funnel to move gel, using a light bridge to hold up a redirection cube and redirect a laser, or you could combine gel and faith plates, allowing you to move gel to certain other locations by using the momentum of the faith plate. No matter what your concept is, it's going to be what your chamber will focus on. Doesn't matter how simple or complex it is. Now we move on to step 3, setting an exit condition. Quite funnily enough, figuring out where to end your test chamber can actually be a great way of starting your test chamber. Bear in mind that your exit condition doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as using a laser to power a catcher which opens a door, or maybe using a funnel to hold a cube on a button which is on the wall. Some creators even choose to leave their doors open and simply have the exit condition be for the player to reach the door. Now that we've briefly gone over the 3 steps that I like to follow when starting out my test chamber, let's take a look at the following sped up footage of me actually starting this chamber and see what I do. So for this test, you can see that I chose to use a funnel as the main testing element. I then decided to leave the door open and have the exit condition simply to be to get to the exit. This ties in nicely with the concept of this test, which is first reversing the funnel, allowing the player to gain height, and then turning off the funnel so that the player will fall down, gaining the required momentum to reach the exit. Oftentimes, it's not a bad idea to tie in your concept and have it be the exit condition itself. The reason for this is now that you've set out your exit condition and have tied it into your concept, it gives you a clear, concrete ending goal and allows you to work backwards when making your test chamber. I'd also like to quickly point out the position of the exit relative to the entrance. It's positioned in a way that as soon as a player enters a test chamber, they are immediately made aware of the exit. Just as it's easier for test creators to work backwards when making tests, the same is often true for players. It's much easier for a player to work backwards once they already know the exit condition for the test chamber than it is to blindly wander around the test and hope that they can solve it. So you may be asking yourselves, what now? You've set out the exit condition, you've decided what elements you want to work with, and you've come up with a concept for your test chamber. It can be very daunting to continue on from this point. Well, let's talk about what I like to call requirements. Requirements is a term I like to use to refer to what items are actually required in order for your concept to function properly in your test chamber. Allow me to demonstrate this by going through the requirements of my own test chamber in relation to the concept that I've chosen. So straight away, we decided that we want a funnel in the test chamber. The requirement right now is at least one funnel. Following this, we wanted to stop the player from using the funnel to get directly to the exit by itself. So, in order to do this, we had to add a fizzler there to stop the player from reaching the exit while using the funnel. The next thing was that the funnel first had to be reversed and then shut off in order for the concept to work and for the player to reach the exit. This would require two change of states in the funnel. You could achieve this change of state in a number of ways. Since we knew that we were only going to use a funnel, our options were limited to mainly buttons and cubes. This meant that we had to have at least two buttons. One to reverse the funnel, and one to shut off the funnel. Now if you're going to have buttons in a test chamber, you're probably also going to need at least one cube. However, this test actually requires two cubes. One which would permanently reverse the funnel, and another one which would be able to disable it later on. For this concept, the way I wanted the player to disable the funnel was to bring a cube with them and destroy it in a fizzler. This then adds another fizzler onto the list of requirements. So after further examination of our concept, what requirements do we have? Well, we've ended up with one funnel, two fizzlers, two buttons, and two cubes. Figuring out these requirements is very helpful to creating any test chamber, as it gives you a clear and defined list of the items that you'll actually need to pull off your concept. The list of requirements will change depending on the concept and chamber. Obviously, for a chamber which uses a laser and any number of redirection cube, you can imagine how the requirements would change. Now that you've figured out the requirements, you're asking yourself once again, what now? Well, to be quite honest, the rest is up to you as a map maker. Play around with the layout, come up with ideas, play test your map, and come up with more ideas. It's important to note that as your intended solution for the test you're creating changes, so will the list of requirements. Personally, I'm the kind of guy who just kind of throws things in and see what works. It's much easier for me to see how the test chamber functions in a 3D environment, so I like to load up my test chamber a lot and continuously playtest it. After playtesting, I can think to myself, maybe I should add a fizzler here, or maybe I could add another portal surface over there, and I can come up with new moves and ideas that I didn't think were possible before. I'll repeat this process of playtesting the map, making minor changes, playtesting the map, and then making more minor changes until eventually I come up with something that I'm happy with. Once you finish coming up with a solution that you're happy with, then it's time to playtest your map again and come up with any unintended solutions that could be possible within your test chamber. Believe me, there's nothing worse than watching someone play your test chamber only for them to skip half of it because you forgot to remove a portal surface that wasn't needed anymore. Once you've finally gone through this whole process, you, my friend, have got a fully ready test chamber. And you can publish it straight away. Just give it a good name and a good description, and up on the workshop it goes, for hundreds of thousands of people to play. In all seriousness, if you want to improve as a test maker, I'd recommend sending your test to friends and family so that they can play it and give you feedback. And just know that if they do break your test chamber and find an unintended solution, you don't need to be angry. Just give yourself a little slap in the face, remember that that kind of stuff is possible, and move on. Perhaps even try to fix your test chamber. Heck, I don't even fix most of my test chambers. I just make one, forget about it, and move on to the next. Because at the end of the day, it's just a learning experience in a perpetual motion that we call the Perpetual Test Initiative. Thank you for watching. My name is Evil Lol. Peace out.